infidelity, deceit, distrust, and shame. Today, Al and Lisa Robertson, part of the Duck Commander clan, join us to talk about one of the darkest seasons of their lives and how their relationship with Jesus Christ led them through the process of rescued love and renewed commitment. That's up next on the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast.
Welcome to Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast, where families are equipped to reflect God's redeeming love. And now here are your hosts, Michael Compagna and Jared Lambert.
Welcome to the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Lambert. We want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. On today's podcast, we're speaking with Al and Lisa Robertson, part of the Duck Commander family just north of us here and up there in West Monroe, Louisiana. Al, Lisa, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us on today's podcast. How you guys doing today?
We're doing great. Thank you for having us, Jared.
Al and Lisa authored a book that was released in early 2015. The name of the book is A New Season, a Robertson family love story of brokenness and redemption. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but before we get into that, why don't you guys tell us how you guys met?
Well, Jared, my story is a lot like a lot of people's. Lisa stalked me in middle school. Is how we initially met each other, and she was a gawky sixth grader, and I was a cool eighth grader at our little country school. And I don't think I ever really knew who she was, but apparently she had her sights set on me early on. So it took her a few years to snag me, but she finally caught up with me.
Right. Awesome. What would you say about that version, Miss Lisa?
Well, he calls it stalking. I just call it oogling, But yeah, the first time I ever saw him, I thought he was the cutest boy I'd ever seen. And of course, like he said, he didn't know me from Adam or Eve either, because he was, he was being chased by all the eighth grade girls, and he was, he was Mr. Pinecrest. That was the name of the school we went to, was
right.
Mr. Pinecrest. And so he was being followed by Miss Pinecrest, and so he just didn't have time for me.
See, Jared, it was the only title I've ever really owned in my life, so it was a big deal for me. It's unfortunate though when you peak in the eighth grade. So I always say, you got to look back to those days. But we actually grew up just up the road from one another, and like I said, we were in the school, but really didn't know it. And we didn't really connect until high school. And, what happens is sometimes you don't see a girl for a long time, and all of a sudden you see her and you're like, whoa.
Right.
This was during a period of time where I was I was working on my testimony, as they say.
Right.
So I was kind of in the midst of a prodigal wandering. And so it was really tough, on those early part of our relationship. I just wasn't the man that obviously God grew me to be later. But, my family at that time was doing great. Mom and Dad had become Christians, and because I grew up in a non-Christian home. I'm really the only one of the brothers that did, because they were so young when Dad and Mom became Christians. But
yeah.
My first 10 years they weren't, and so I think some of that had an influence on me ultimately to kind of have to get out there and try my own way, as a lot of prodigals do. And so the family was doing great. Unfortunately, I wasn't doing so good, and it finally ended with me heading off to New Orleans, not too far from where you guys are, to kind of find myself. But all I seemed to find there, Jared, was a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And, when you go to the French Quarter without a game plan, you better watch out. You're gonna be in serious trouble.
Exactly right. So you talked a little bit about already, but of course we're familiar. Those of us who watched the Duck Dynasty show, and Al, you just made a recent appearance over just the last couple years. How was it growing up a Robertson, and what was it that led you to make an appearance on the show a couple years ago?
Well, we were in hunting. People in Louisiana knew us already because we'd been making duck calls and duck hunting videos and had a pretty big following in the hunting world for a long time. We've made 20 different DVDs, making one every year. And so we kind of went back with that, and that was kind of our little cult group, kind of our following was more in the hunting world. And that kind of grew into what now has become Duck Dynasty. But folks in Louisiana know that we were always about hunting.
Right.
This reality TV stuff took off because people really were looking for characters, and Louisiana has a lot of characters.
Right.
They told us it was Louisiana and Alaska. That was the two groups they were really looking for families. And so they sort of discovered us through the hunting stuff and thought, we think America could benefit from a family like this. And so really the show kind of came about as a result of that. And, of course, Lisa and I were in full-time ministry, at our church here at Whites Ferry Road, the church, which is our family church. And I was there for 24 years. And so when the show first came out, we had been filming another show with the family that was on the Outdoor Channel, and we thought we'd be able to do that and work full-time for the church, but we couldn't. I mean, we had a full-time job, and so everybody else in the family was working for the company, and so that just kind of became their job. And so that was the reason we didn't come on for the first 3 seasons. And then we finally started appearing in season 4. And I always like to famously say that my appearance was the first one was Mom and Dad doing a kind of like a 50-year vow renewal, and I got to officiate it, which was my entrance on the show.
Yeah.
And it just so happened to be the largest rated show, not only for Duck Dynasty, but in the history of reality TV.
Wow.
Almost 12 million viewers that night. So I always say if they'd have got me on sooner, there's no telling where this show would have gone.
Exactly.
Look at the ratings, that I delivered.
Hey, you can't lie. I mean, the data don't lie. So
the data don't lie. That's right. So we've been appearing since then, and it kind of ebbs and flows. I mean, now I'm working back full time for the company and speaking and doing things like that, doing a lot of marriage ministry. But we still are committed to the show. Lisa and I make ourselves available. We're not on every episode, but we're probably on more than half the episodes every season. So
Right.
It's been fun. We get to reconnect with the family, and growing up for Robertson was just like you see on the show, kind of crazy, funny.
Right.
Everybody has a great sense of humor and a pretty good gift of gab. A lot of them have a lot of hair. I can grow a beard. I just choose not to because this woman sitting here beside me doesn't like a big hairy beard. So,
Right.
her greatest. Tell them what your greatest nightmare is.
The worst thing that I think could possibly happen, it would be a nightmare, is for me to roll over one morning and look at who is laying beside me, and for heaven's sake, that they look like Cy or Phil or Willie or Jay. That is a nightmare.
Absolutely. Well, Ms. Lisa, on the show, the love of the family and the camaraderie and the family values really pop out. It's so wonderful watching you guys interact, whether it's TV or not. But tell us what it's like marrying into the Robertson family.
Well, it was very exciting for me because, like Alan said, I really had chased him since I was in the 6th grade. And so this was a dream come true for me to be marrying into the family.
Right.
But they are, just like you see on TV, they're a very loving family. They were together all the time. They did everything together. They worked together. They, worshiped the Lord together. They played together. We had a great time whenever we were first married. And I really came from a smaller family. I had an older brother and an older sister, but, that's 3 of us, but still, the age difference was so far apart.
Yeah.
By the time, I was 8 years old, my brother was out of the house and gone. And, then my sister also, by the time, I was 10 years old, she was off dating. So it was really just me at the house with my folks. And so going into a family where there was activity all the time, there was people there all the time. Alan's granny and pa, Phil's mom and dad, lived right up the hill from them. And so we seriously, it was a fun time. We always had laughs and, a debate around the table. Whoever was the loudest, was the one that got to be heard. Whoever ate the fastest got the most food. So, but it was fun. It was, you got to talk politics, religion, what had happened during the day. And that was exciting for me.
Right. Well, that's awesome. Well, so you talked about being on the show early in the marriage and like I said, early 2015, you guys put out your book, A New Season, A Robertson Family Love Story of Brokenness and Redemption. Why don't you tell us, why did you guys decide to write this book, and what was it that led you guys to get involved in marriage ministry?
Well, we like anybody that's in full-time ministry, obviously you deal a lot with couples and, just natural stuff, premarital and doing weddings and things like that. But I think for us, what really sort of shaped us was because it was an area that was not a real strong suit for us. We struggled a lot in our marriage. In our early marriage, I think we struggled a lot, like a lot of young couples do, just not knowing things, really not spending much time in preparation to be married, to understand how different it is, and how much pressure there is. We were married young as well, and so there were some typical pressures from just being immature. But, so I think that part was more typical of what couples go through. But as our marriage went along and we began having some pretty major problems, including infidelity, we began to realize then that there were some things that we had brought into our relationship, both of us, that we had just never really unpacked and let God work on and really change some things in us. And so about the 15-year period, and again, we're in full-time ministry, so I'm a pastor, Lisa's a pastor's wife, obviously a very public, difficult situation. We went through this infidelity, and it just shattered us. It broke us apart. Of course, it was very difficult in the family. Lisa was working at that time for Duck Commander, for our family business. So obviously that created a lot of tension within our own family. And so I think that's why we call it, a tale of brokenness, because out of that brokenness is where we then began to find some healing. And even, where do the healers go for healing? A lot of times, it's a very lonely place sometimes in being a pastor, because you don't really feel like you can get help. And it's not true, but you feel that way. And so, I think we had just ignored a lot of problems. And so we found a great Christian counselor. We eventually worked our way back together. And so out of that, as we healed, a few years after that, we started sharing that story. And of course, we were open about it in our church here because they went through it with us. But we began telling our story, in churches and places that would listen to us and retreats and things like that. And everybody said, man, you guys need to write a book. And we said, well, we're so busy working full-time ministry, when would we ever have time to write a book? And so we just kind of kept doing it testimony style for a long time. But whenever we made the transition out of full-time ministry onto the show, which, by the way, we're still in full-time ministry, it's just a much larger now, group that we work with. Yeah. When we did that, I think then we had the time, we said, okay, we need to sit down and write this story down, because it really can help couples. Not just the ones we can talk to physically, but ones that'll just get it and read it and pass it on to somebody else. And so we were very open and very honest and very frank in the book about our mistakes. In fact, when it first came out, of course, we were on the show, and so everybody knew us as the Robertsons, and they were like, oh, this family's great. They don't have any problems and all this is what people thought. And then, of course, our book comes out, and it's just the opposite. We tell everything. And so we would do these interviews with all these national people, and they would say, well, why would you talk about this? And we said, well, we want people to find hope and healing and through difficult times in their marriage. And if they know a couple like this, who on television at least look like they got it all together, but they really don't, because we're all just, trying to make our way and figure out the best way to do it and honor God.
Right. And
so that's what led to the book. And then that's opened a lot of doors for us to talk to groups, obviously, and to share with them our story. And so it was one of the most difficult things we ever did, to relive all that, to go through the process of writing the book. But it was also one of the greatest liberating things, because we knew this was something that was going to honor God and was going to bring some hope and healing to some folks that need it. And I can't tell you, Jared, all the emails we've gotten and notes, and met people when we're out on the road that said, man, your book has helped us, finally start seeking some help for some things in our life. And part of that was Lisa being molested as a young girl. Those kind of things came out through our process. And so when she talks about that, going through an abortion, things like that, it resonates with people, women and men. And so it's been incredible to see the healing that's come about in a lot of people's lives, because we were willing to be courageous enough to tell the truth about some of our struggles.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking at some of the feedback from y'all book and some of the reviews, and the underlying thread in all the reviews talk about how what amazing transparency and courage you guys showed. But it wasn't just focusing on the tragedy. You guys also did a great job of talking about the redemption and the reconciliation. And one of the things I like about the book is that in every chapter you have a little section called Season Reflections, and that includes scripture for inspiration and encouragement. What made you guys decide to plug that into the book?
Well, of course, me being a teacher most of my life as a pastor, I was very interested and I didn't want to just do a tell-all about our life, but I wanted to then say, what can you do about that? Because, these are some things that we learned. And so it was interesting because when we first set up with their ghostwriter, Beth, to do the book, we were going to do our story and then have the last third of the book, basically be a teaching section. And so she got into it and she called us and she's like, Al, Lisa, we're the whole story is the book. I mean, it's so much stuff I can't possibly have the end. So that's when we came up with the idea. We said, well, look, why don't we just every chapter along the way, as we discovered things in our actual marriage, here's what we learned, and then here's what God says from His Word that we should have known but didn't, but now we want you to know as a couple. So this way, it works as a book to not only help people through their struggles that are struggling, but it's also a great preventative.
Yeah.
We want young couples to read this book and say, this is some of these things is an experience I never want to have.
Yes. Someone
Someone said that experience is the best teacher, but Lisa and I think that someone else's experience is the best teacher, because if I can avoid those mistakes, I'm going to be way better off. And so that was sort of the genesis of the teaching section. So I've been real proud of that aspect, that we wanted people to know. There's a couple of appendixes in there as well, some things that we do teach when we're on the road. And because we want people to know that, look, you can avoid these things. You don't have to go through these same difficulties in your marriage. And marriage is hard, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be as hard as we make it out to be if we just live like God wants us to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, besides the book, you guys also recently put out a couples devotion. So what made you guys decide to make that available?
Well, we just, we really thought, after we did the devotional, the Duck Commander devotional, and everybody, had input into that in the family, we got a lot of feedback on that, and we wanted something just for couples. Now, this could be, a couple before they get married, a couple who has been married 10 years, a couple who's been married 30 years. It doesn't matter. It's something that will go through every part of their life, starting with how they met. And, it goes all the way through, and they're able to talk and discuss things with one another. We did a marriage class for, I think, about 7 years at the church. And part of that class, you had to do homework together every single night.
Yeah.
So whenever we started to do the Devo book, the publisher said, well, why don't you do a 365-day? And we said, no way. See, couples can't do that together every single day. Most couples can't because, you've got work, you got kids. Kids have ball. Just all the different things that a family has to do. And so we thought, well, let's do one where one night a week they could have like a date night or something, and they could do this devotional, because it would take you 20 to 30 minutes to do the devotional.
Right.
And, once a week is a great goal for somebody to have, to be able to do a devotional together, because what's going to happen is, one, they're going to grow closer to God, but as they grow closer to God, they're going to grow closer to one another. And, of
Awesome.
course, that's the goal in, the first book we did, and then that's the goal in this book, and, of course, it would be the goal for every book, is first to grow closer to God and then to grow closer together.
Awesome. Next summer, you guys are trying to put together a Robertson marriage cruise up to Alaska. Tell us a little bit about the cruise. What can people expect? And, of course, we want to, give people an opportunity and a place to go to check that out.
Yeah, we're looking at. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity. We're looking at not only the cruise but some other opportunities that we're going to try to start doing around the country in cities, and so we're developing that. But the cruise is one of the first things we're going to do, and it's going to be next July 25th through August 1st, and it's an Alaskan cruise, which we're excited about. We've been to Alaska once, and I tell you, I love Louisiana. I love our bayous, and I love all the things that we have here just naturally. Alaska is the only other place I've been that's just like takes that to the next level. I mean, you've got just so much pristine, just very few people have ever been there. And it's an amazing place. And so I'm excited about doing the cruise there and getting to see some of the glaciers and cool stuff you get to do. Well, it's different from a Caribbean cruise because every day you're in a port, and so you're getting to discover a lot of great things about Alaska. So what we're going to do is not only have an awesome time discovering Alaska, but we'll have some marriage classes and part of this retreat we're going to do. And we're shooting for 300 couples. It'd be great if we had even more than that would sign up and come on board with us. We got some other folks who are going to come. John and Paula Godwin from the show are going to be with us. They're our best friends and kind of walk through our marriage stuff with us. So they're going to be there also. But it's going to be in July 2017, and there's a Premier Productions is the group that's putting it on, and it'll eventually be on their website sometime later this month, as well as the duckcommander.com. But we have a lady named Dina, and so if anybody wants to send her an email, it's DEANA, Dina, at jpsmediallc.com. And that's a great place to be able to go. And she'll email anybody information if they're interested in pricing of the cruise and stuff like that. Her name is Dina, and she works for us. But it's going to be great. There'll be a website up where you can get all the information you need to know about all the excursions, the classes, what we're going to be offering, and that sort of thing. And that should be up by August at some point. So you'll be able to do that and hopefully sign up. So we'd love to have some folks from Louisiana. We got a few locals we know are going to go with us. So we need a good representation.
Sounds great. So once again, that's Dina, DEANA, at jpsmediallc.com for more information on the Robertson Marriage Cruise. Once again, that's July 25th through August the 1st. And that's a cruise. Where are we leaving out of? Are y'all aware of that yet?
Yeah, leave out of Seattle. And then every day you'll be in a different port city in Alaska. So they have a great day where you get to see all the glaciers up close and personal. Well, I've never done a cruise. We were actually just, in the land part of Alaska a couple of years ago. But it's an amazing, I can't wait to get back. In fact, we're going back this year as well and doing some speaking up there. So I take every opportunity to go. I meet people in Alaska. They're a lot like Louisiana people. They're outdoorsmen, they're a little bit different. They're wired a little bit different. As one guy said, they're turned a little funny, but they're our kind of folks. So I always enjoy going up there. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of these days we may have some kind of place up there because there's some good hunting up there too.
Awesome. All right, well, tell what was the name of your devotional? I don't know if we got that.
It's called the Duck Commander Devotional for Couples.
Awesome.
And it's kind of a follow-up to the Duck Commander Devotional, which, as Lisa said, is a 365. And if any listeners haven't picked that up, that's a great one to have too. That's a daily that the whole family did.
Awesome.
But this one, this was a follow-up for that. It's a weekly, and we really think couples. The feedback we've gotten so far has been really positive about it.
Awesome. All right. So once again, their book, A New Season, A Robertson Family Love Story of Brokenness and Redemption. That's available on Amazon or any other book retailer. And they also have the Duck Commander Devotional, which is a daily devotional, and the Duck Commander Devotional for Couples, which is the weekly devotional that they talked about. And, of course, just like we just talked about, I want y'all to check out the Robertson Marriage Cruise to Alaska. And once again, July 25th. through August the 1st of 2017, and want to put that email address out just one more time for anybody who's interested. That's Dina, DEANA, at jpsmediallc.com. Well, Mr. Al and Miss Lisa, we greatly appreciate your time. It's been such a blessing. Appreciate you coming, share your story and encouraging us. Just want to thank you guys for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome, Jerry. And thank you what you guys are doing for marriages and just your ministry work down there in Baton Rouge. We get down there quite often, for LSU games and things at the Capitol. And it's just really neat to see like-minded believers down there really trying to make a difference. So thank you for what you do as well.
Absolutely. Well, I like to tell anybody who will listen that if you're willing to be in relationship with us and you have a heart for the kingdom of God, whether you're down the road in Baton Rouge or up in West Monroe, we'd love to join together and see what we can do to make Jesus more famous.
That's right. Thank you, Jared.
All righty. Once again, Al and Lisa Robertson. Well, that wraps it up for this edition of the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast. As always, we're asking you to subscribe. We're asking you to rate and give us a review. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want. We want to be able to serve you better and meet your needs. One way you can do that is subscribing to the podcast, sharing it with your family and friends, and then rating our podcast and writing up a review. So that'll do it for this episode of the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. For more information about Healing Place Church, visit us online at healingplacechurch.org. To stay informed of upcoming events, check us out on Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share this podcast with your family and your friends.